My name is Craig Warren, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Greater Twin Cities United Way. We feel that the Better Outcomes Initiative is important for Minnesota because of the diversity that exists within our state. And this is really a state where a lot of people have enjoyed a great deal of prosperity within our state, but where equity has not proven as easy to attain as the prosperity has been. I think it's part of philanthropy's role because this is a community that, from our perception, is chronically underserved. We have at Greater Twin Cities United Way, we have our Arise project, which focuses on LGBTQ youth who are experiencing homelessness. And homelessness is something that has a variety of negative impacts on people. One of my identities is as an African American male. Inclusion is important to me, diversity is important to me, and equity is important to me. And for me, being aware of my own identity and being part of a group that's been historically disenfranchised and still experiences structural and individual barriers today makes me very attuned to other groups who obviously have a different experience, but that I know enough to know they're experiencing bias, and I know what that feels like. And that motivates and inspires me to, as a leader, create an environment that's an inclusive environment and to advocate for that.
Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Jolly, President and CEO of the St. Paul and Minnesota Community Foundations. So over 25 years ago, I was incoming assistant chancellor at the University of Nebraska. We went through what was National Coming Out Day. This is a day when our students would come out about their orientation. And that day, 4 of our students were hospitalized. I began to realize how many of our students were there without support, without anyone. I grew up in the Native community. My dad taught me how to deal with racism from the first days I can remember. He knew how. He had learned it from his dad. It was passed on from generation to generation. We knew how to resist. But our LGBTQ students, our Two-Spirit students, so many of them don't have the family and the community to help them get through those first steps of meeting the thoughtless, sometimes thoughtful discrimination that is visited upon them. I am so delighted that we have a Better Outcomes Initiative. Someone asked me, can you say why it's worth your time and effort? And I'm going to say it's a shame that there is a need for time and effort to understand how under-resourced this community has been. And it's time for us as a community to come together and embrace all our children. The St. Paul and Minnesota Community Foundations has partnered with a number of other national organizations so that we can give meaning to the idea of dismantling a belief in a hierarchy of human value. See, you can't separate out different kinds of hate. What gives fuel to one kind is just fodder for the next, and we need to deal with all of it. The Better Outcomes Initiative is incredibly important. As important is being able to look at the work that we do in our own communities and our own foundations, in our own giving, to impact change and help create a level playing field. We need to be certain that our investments represent the same level of access and equity for everyone that we hope for, that we assure that there's full service, full outreach, and full recognition for all of our community.
Hi, I'm Trista Harris. I'm president of the Minnesota Council on Foundations. We're a network of 180 foundations that support Minnesota nonprofits. MCF supports the Better Outcomes Initiative because we want to make sure that foundations have all the data necessary to close the gaps that the LGBTQ community is facing. It's important that Minnesota supports this initiative because we say that we're a place of fairness, and I think it's deep in Minnesotans' DNA that we're a place where everybody can be successful and thrive, but we have a lot of systems that make that impossible. And so I want Minnesota to be the sort of place where kids in Lake Wobegon and kids on Lake Street can thrive. I'd encourage other foundations and individuals to support the initiative by jumping in. So I think often we're afraid if we feel like we don't fully understand an issue and know all of the stats and those sort of things, we're not willing to take the first step. We know our broken places in society. And if we can come together to start to to understand that a civic disaster is when a police bullet hits an unarmed black man, or when a woman's hijab is pulled off of her when she's on a school bus, or when a student can't use the bathroom that matches their gender identity. I think it's important that foundations see that we're all LGBTQ funders. If you're funding healthcare, if you're funding housing, if you're working in different ethnic communities or geographic communities, guess what? There's folks that live in those communities that need to be reached out to. And so if we can start to think about a broader philanthropic strategy where we understand that people have multiple identities and they've got multiple issue areas that are intersecting with them, I think we'll have stronger philanthropic strategies and we'll have better outcomes in communities.
I've learned that the best way to be an ally is to be first in line, to say what you value and to embrace who you value.
Now we feel it's so critical. There's so much going on within our local community, within our broader community on the national scene, that we really feel it's more important than ever that people come together to work towards creating greater equity and prosperity for all members of our community.
I'd like to thank Minnesota's philanthropic community for really stepping up in this initiative. I think that there's a lot of both small foundations and big foundations that have jumped to the table and sort of raised their hand and said, I'm all in, and I can't wait to see which foundations join the table next.